A Russian ceasefire is due to come into effect around the besieged city of Mariupol. The Red Cross says it's preparing to start evacuating thousands of the estimated 160,000 civilians thought to be sheltering in the city ruins. Russian forces have been bombarding the southern port continuously for days. The strategic coastal city is key to controlling access to the Sea of Azov. Previous attempts to establish humanitarian corridors out of the city have failed.
Stuck in Mariupol. Residents of the besieged city have gotten used to broken promises of ceasefires and humanitarian corridors. Russia said it would uphold a ceasefire on Thursday. But it was yet another false dawn, as fighting continued on the streets of a city now consumed by urban warfare.
Of course it's still shooting. It wasn't quiet this morning, of course. The shooting this morning didn't make it possible to hear the ceasefire, not at all. There's a lot of shooting.
The month-long Russian bombardment has left this vital port in ruins. Several attempts to let civilians leave have failed. A convoy of 45 Ukrainian buses, along with a Red Cross team delivering humanitarian aid, was due to arrive in the city on Friday morning, in the latest attempt to get people out. Russia has promised another limited ceasefire for the convoy, along the route from Mariupol to the Ukrainian-held city of Zaporizhia.
Every day, we're trying to do everything to ensure the work of humanitarian corridors from Mariupol in order to evacuate civilians remaining in the city, including women, children, and elderly people. Partly we managed to do it, but in most of the cases, Russian forces do not let people go to free Ukrainian territory and do not let any humanitarian convoys enter.
Many in Mariupol fear it could be now or never.
We are afraid. Can you imagine living and walking among the dead bodies?
Walking on corpses not buried for a fortnight.
Ukraine says at least 5,000 civilians, including 200 children, have been killed in the city since Russia's attack began. The Red Cross has described the situation in Mariupol as apocalyptic. It says thousands more lives depend on an immediate evacuation.
And we're now joined by DW correspondent Amir Nassif, who joins us from Lviv in western Ukraine. Amir, intense fighting going on in Mariupol, but Ukraine is still in control of the city. How long can that last?
Russia gave an ultimatum a while ago saying that the Ukrainian soldiers either had to give up or they would continue to pound the city. And that's what we're seeing right now, Gerhard. Russia has said very clearly that they will not continue to exacerbate this humanitarian crisis until Ukraine surrenders, perhaps hoping that the international community will see what's happening there and encourage Ukraine to surrender that city. But Ukraine claims that it has an advantage, that it's defending its home territory, and make no mistake about it, Mariupol is a very strategic city. Both sides want to have control of the city because it gives them control of the Sea of Azov. So I think, Gerhard, this can go on for a long time. Either Russia wins a complete and total victory with the total destruction of the city and most of the civilian lives there, or the Ukrainians pull off an unlikely victory and maintain control of that city, and hopefully avoiding the worst.
Now, has the ceasefire held in Mariupol so far, and is there any update on the evacuation?
It's very hard to know what's happening in that city, Gerhard. It's very hard to know what fighting is occurring. People have been reporting gunshots and the sounds of shelling. But of course, the humanitarian corridors are a limited amount, limited area in which buses can come in, take people and pick people up and take them out. So yesterday we saw that they had agreed on a humanitarian corridor, but the Red Cross, after bringing 45 buses just to the outskirts of the city, decided to cancel those plans. The buses were waiting last night in Berdyansk, which is a city neighboring Mariupol on the Sea of Azov. And the efforts today are going to be to get those buses safely in. Those buses are also carrying humanitarian aid because people have gone through the resources that they were last able to bring in over a week ago. And they're trying to bring people out on those buses, people who don't have their own cars, people who are in need of aid. Now, the good news is, though, Gerhard, that yesterday, because of the efforts to open up a corridor there and make a ceasefire on that corridor, about 1,400, 1,500 people were able to use their own cars and get safely out to a safer area, Zaporizhia, where Ukrainians have control there. So at least those numbers, those civilians were able to get out safely yesterday.
Now, you're in Lviv in western Ukraine, where many refugees and displaced people have found shelter. What's the situation there?
You know, the number of people who cross the border into Poland every day has slightly decreased, but that does not mean that the exodus is over, Gerhard. The first million people left Ukraine within the first 10 days or so, but it's only taken about a week and a half just now for another million people to leave, the total coming to 4 million this week. That is over the number that was the worst case scenario estimate by the UN when this war broke out. So more people have fled Ukraine than was expected to be the total number of people fleeing throughout the course of this war at the very beginning. You can see that here in Lviv. I was at the train station the other day, and there's a little humanitarian village set up there where people are being served soup while they wait for their buses to cross the Polish border. And I spoke to one woman who spent 2 nights in Lviv because every time she tried to get on a bus, it was standing room only. She's an elderly woman and needs a seat to take that journey across the border. So it really is, it has not died down. The number of people crossing the border every day continues to be a very large number of people, Gerhard.
Amir Asif, thank you very much. Russia's President Vladimir Putin is threatening to shut off energy supplies to Europe if EU countries do not meet his demand to pay for gas in rubles. Deadline today. It's an attempt to shore up the Russian currency against crippling Western sanctions. But Germany, France and Austria have again rejected the demand, and they're already preparing emergency plans to counter potential energy shortages.
Russian gas is still flowing into Europe, but that could all be about to change. Speaking in Moscow on Thursday, Russian President Vladimir Putin said the West must start paying in rubles or else the taps get turned off. In order to purchase Russian natural gas, they must open ruble accounts in Russian banks. It is from these accounts that gas payments will be made. If such payments are not made, we will consider this a default on the part of the buyers, with all of the ensuing consequences. Nobody sells us anything for free, and we are not going to do charity work. Therefore, in that case, existing contracts will be stopped. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said Germany would continue to pay in euros and sometimes dollars. Germany's economy minister had stronger words. With regard to the threat, demand or consideration, one doesn't know what to call it anymore. To be made to pay in rubles, it is crucial for us that the contracts are respected. It's important for us not to give a signal that we will be blackmailed by Putin. The US called Putin's latest move a sign of desperation.
I think fundamentally, this is just another indication of the dire straits that Russia's economy is in. This is a sign of economic and financial desperation on the part of the Russian Federation.
With the Kremlin's demand set to start from Friday, the rationing of gas could quickly follow, making the impact of Russia's war felt in homes across Europe.
Let's have a quick look now at some other Ukraine-related stories that we're following for you. US President Joe Biden wants to release up to 180 million barrels of oil from the country's strategic reserves to control rising energy prices related to the war in Ukraine. The International Energy Agency will hold an emergency meeting on Friday to discuss further actions. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that Russia is concentrating troops in the Donbas region in order to launch, quote, powerful offensives. In a video address, he said Ukraine would defend itself and that Moscow should expect sanctions to continue as long as the war goes on. Ukraine's nuclear authorities say Russian forces occupying the contaminated Chernobyl nuclear site have begun to leave after showing signs of radiation sickness. Russian troops seized control of the plant shortly after the invasion began, though Ukrainian staff have continued to oversee safety operations there.